It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Thursday, June 29th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high-quality content. Is pretty happy Matvei Michkov is a Philadelphia Flyer, Russ.
Yeah, it's a nice pick and a good passing of a first test for the Flyers' new regime.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there. Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here with Russ Cohen, who is on Twitter at Sportsology and is coming to us from Nashville bright and early this morning. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green checks. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit. ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. You can subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, I talked to Hadi Kalakesh, our Locked On NHL Prospects host here at the network, and that video is in your YouTube feeds and in your audio feeds right now if you want to hear what I thought. So let's get straight to what you thought about the Michkov pick.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I mean, it was interesting how things were falling, and I knew if he fell to the Flyers at this point, we had hashed it out that we both thought they would take him. Like 2 months ago, I didn't, but I could tell getting closer to the draft that they would. So it was interesting kind of watching their table. Like I watched their table the whole time. Like I watched their table. I watched the Canadiens table. I watched everybody's table. The Capitals, I was watching to see if there was going to be any phone activity. I was watching to see if someone was going to walk over, and nothing happened. So I kind of knew everybody was just making their selections, right? So you take out the element of trade or anything else, and when it did come down to it, I was like, okay, it's now down to Michkov or Leonard. Like that's the way I saw it, and it did. It came down to that, and you have to take Michkov every time because he's the second best offensive player in this draft. Like that's just the way it is. So, some of the other teams now, it's the teams now that picked other players before the Flyers that are going to be watched for the next 3-4 years to kind of see how this works out. And not the Flyers because they had the guts to take them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that, in years past, we might have really thought they absolutely would have gone with Leonard. And in my mind, it was kind of like 2/3 Michkov, 1/3 Leonard was the chances. When it came to that, I wasn't surprised Montreal did what they did, given they took Slavkovsky last year, but it was questionable.
Yes.
I think like most Montreal people were like, you should have taken Michkov. Like,
right.
I think that's what was happening there. And then Arizona, whew,
they made it very easy for this to happen.
Very easy, kind of going off the board there with their picks. So it was kind of a no-brainer, and they did the no-brainer thing, which again is a very uncomfortable feeling, I think, for some Flyers fans, for them to actually do the right thing there, but they did it. And I think that not only was it a great pick and a tremendous offensive talent, we all knew the risk going into it in terms of him having the 3-year deal with SKA St. Petersburg. But then, we find out there was a secret meeting in Voorhees on Friday where they literally shut everybody else out of the building at the time.
Right.
And then they had additional meetings with more people in Nashville. Everything was great. He says, I want to be a Flyer. I want to bring a Stanley Cup back to this city. His interview quotes were incredible. You look at his responses and like, how excited are you to be a part of the rebuild? And he says, I guess that means we'll start winning when I get here.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think he did himself really well overall.
He's not lacking for confidence, which is good. Being in like a big market is not going to bother him. He's had the spotlight on him. There have been times where he was better than Bedard in a tournament. So like he knows this class. He knows what it is to play against men. He's playing against men. It's the only thing that you have to worry about, and someone brought this up to me, and so I will mention it, is that, his owner at some point might offer him like a king's ransom to stay a couple more years. And you don't know if that will happen and what he'll say or do at that point, but you can't worry about it right now. So I think he'll end up coming over in 2 years. I think there's things going on in Russia that I think are going to help get some hockey players over here. So I think that's what we're looking at. I think by year 3, he'll be in Philly. That's my guess, and we'll see. So that would be tremendous for them. And at that point, that's where this regime has to have all those other things in place for him if they, want to take a step.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be extremely important. Danny Briere said, it'll happen when it happens, because that's what he has to say. He also said that it's unlikely that Michkov will be at development camp, which is completely expected.
Yeah.
Given his pro contract in the KHL, I just don't think they would allow it. But I do think that Michkov himself hinted that he could be over sooner than 3 years. He's like, you'll never know. And it could be sooner. But I think what it also does, to your point, is create an environment where you have, maybe you don't call him a generational talent, but you call him an elite level.
Yeah, he's an elite level player. I can't call him generational. No.
Yeah. But you have this elite level player who's a scorer, who has the motivation, who wants to come here and win a Stanley Cup. If you don't do your due diligence, Danny Briere, and get a team together that he wants to come play to sooner,
right?
That's the risk there for the Flyers, right? Is that puts them on notice that the Flyers have to do a much better job than you might think otherwise, right?
Yeah.
In order to get him to come over.
Yeah, no question. And for those people that are worried, like, well, how's this going to work out with John Tortorella? Don't worry about
Doesn't
that.
matter.
Things have a way of working themselves out. I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah. As far as, a couple other things he said, Michkov said he hates losing, which is great. And actually, I think that jives with John Tortorella wonderfully, like in terms of how
that part does.
The game.
No question. Yeah. No question. That I think that's a big thing. I mean, no hockey player is going to say, "Oh, I love losing." No, they're not going to say that. But to have that be part of his mantra, that's good.
Yeah, he talks about it in a way that implies like a drive that maybe you don't hear it in that way from other players.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
And then the other thing, we know when we've talked about him on the show that unfortunately, his father passed away in not great circumstances.
No.
Recently, and he mentioned that his father would be really proud of him, and the work that they've done together. And I just thought that was a really nice note, in terms of recognizing that, and that he's, thinking about his dad on a day like yesterday was. And it was
there were a few prospects yesterday that had that same situation where a loved one had passed away just before the draft or in that year or whatever. And it's tough, and these kids, it makes you grow up faster than maybe you want to.
Yeah.
But I feel for him.
Yeah. All right. Well, the Flyers had another pick in the first round. They went with Oliver Bonk, who we talked about on Tuesday's show, but we didn't get into it in so much detail, but we are going to do that coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by a product I use almost every day, and that is AG1. Maybe you're like me, you want to be healthy and eat well, but it's always easier said than done. That's no longer the case with AG1. AG1 is a foundational nutritional supplement that delivers comprehensive nutrients to support whole body health. With one delicious scoop of AG1 and a glass of water every day, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. Their special blend of ingredients support your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, all of that. It can be hard and expensive to keep track of multiple different supplements and vitamins, not to mention how hard it can be on your stomach. But AG1 costs you less than $3 a day, and you're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your coffee habit. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go drink AG1.com/NHL network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL network and check it out. All right. Well, we're going to have more coverage on the rest of the Flyers draft picks and any other moves they may make on future shows. But today we are going to talk about Oliver Bonk, the Flyers selection at 22nd overall. And like I said, we did talk about him on Tuesday. And I talked about him with Hadi Kalakesh on a separate video. You can watch that. So let's go straight to your take on this, Russ. What do you think?
Well, I mean, he's a good defenseman. He is not an overwhelmingly exciting defenseman. It's not like he has great attributes that you say, wow, this guy just jumps off the page. He doesn't. I think he'll play in the NHL. I don't think that's a problem. I just think the Flyers went a bit safe here. And that's fine. If that's what they wanted to do, that's up to them. I looked at what was on the board and I was like, there was some pretty high level talent on this board that they didn't want to go with. So, okay. So we look at Bonk and we say, all right, I don't care that he's a second generation guy. I don't, especially since his dad didn't play the position. So
right.
His dad's influence so far was cut your hair before the combine. Like that was his, so that's so far, that's his influence. But I'm sure he did help him growing up. I'm just kidding. But as far as his play, he is a very good defender. He's definitely physical at times. His offense isn't great. Like that's the part where he didn't have a good playoffs. There's no way of spelling it any other way for London. And, overall it was an underwhelming season offensively. And so we'll have to see what they can do with him and where he goes from here. But yeah, it's not like he's not going to make it. I'm not worried about that part. I'm just like, hey, you went a little safe here, Flyers.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that just kind of doing a survey of what the other scouts said out there about the pick and some other prospect experts, there was kind of divided. Some people really thought he was the next best defenseman on the board, and some people didn't. Everybody said he'd make the NHL, but I think the divide was, is he a number 4 or is he a bottom pairing guy?
Right. That is the divide.
Yeah. And so it's, to me, that's a fine line, right? Because a bottom pairing guy is going to step up and be on your second pairing every now and again anyway, right? That's just the nature of the game. So you have to know, can he play that middle pairing kind of defense? And it seems like that this is a wait and see pick. And that's what I said on the video with Hadi that's in your feeds. It's that he seems to be progressing at a decent pace so that when he would get to the NHL, he should be at his ceiling in terms of that step, to get to the NHL. But he's not going to wow you. He's not going to be an elite player, but he should be able to continue the progress that he's been making. And it's a wait and see pick. And I think that, to your point, you look at the 5 players that went after him. And you may,
and there's still a few on the board that are really good too, by the way.
Yeah. And so, I got a little Keandre Miller flashback feelings with this pick, because you have Gabe Perreault went next, Tanner Molendyke after that, Otto Stenberg, Quentin Musty, Callum Ritchie. We talked about all of those guys, all of them with a little bit more positivity than we did with Bonk. But again, much like when we talked about the Cutter Gauthier pick, it wouldn't have been our pick, but it was a good pick, right?
Yes.
And so this is a good pick. It's not a great pick, but it's also this could turn out to be a much better pick than we're saying now.
Yeah,
this situation.
Unfortunately, this pick is kind of like the revenge of Chuck Fletcher's bad work, because had they had a second round pick, I think they would have done work this differently. I actually think they wouldn't have gone for a defenseman. I think they would have gone for one of those high level offensive players on the board, knowing that, hey, in another 10 picks or so,
Bonk will still be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they didn't have that option.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point as well, that they absolutely would have gone with a different pick here and maybe taken a chance on one of these other forwards, or thought about Tanner Molendyk instead and had the two defensemen to kind of compete with each other to
that's
see
fair too. Yeah.
who made it. But God, I mean, I'm a huge Otto Stenberg fan. So
I like Stenberg a lot. I like Musty a lot.
Yeah. So, Gabe Perreault, I think, is a question.
It's mixed feeling. It's mixed feelings on him.
Mixed feelings, but in terms of the U.S. national team development program guys for me. But Otto Stenberg sitting there was a little tough for me. I gotta say.
Yeah. No, it was hard for all of us. We were all watching like, wow, look who's going off the board now. So I get it.
As far as the conversations that they had with Oliver Bonk after the pick, he was like brutally honest. He's like, yeah, I don't know anything about Philadelphia, but had good vibes in the interviews. And he did have a sense that the Flyers might take him just because of the number of interviews and talks that they had.
Well, he also was in their video, right? The takeoff or take flight video. He was in that too.
Yes. Yeah. So little hint there as to who the Flyers were going to take. And he also is really honest about his physicality right now, that he needs to get bigger and stronger.
Yeah.
But he knows he's a little skinny.
Yeah. I mean, but every prospect is like, I never hold that against him. But he is an engaging kid. He's a good guy. And so I like the character element of him for sure. And that part's good. I mean, there's nothing to be said about that. But yeah, this one we'll look at and we'll just decide down the road, like, hey, how does it? And and look, they put a premium again on the fact that he's a right-handed shot. I don't know if you need
his shot doesn't matter as much with his play.
And I don't know if you need to collect all these right-handed shots, but that's another discussion for another day.
Yeah, I think so. And, some of the other things that he needs to work on, I think, are the kinds of things that are improvable in terms of skating skills. And, talking about the style of play in London, you mentioned this when we talked about him the other day, that the system that London has in place doesn't really allow him to do the other things that he needs to learn and to get better at them, because he's all about the physicality.
Right.
In London and using his body. And so maybe he hasn't had the opportunity to build some of those other skills because of the way that he's being used in London.
Nope, that's fair. And that's what we'll see down the road. That's a good point.
All right. We have so much more to talk about. Russ, of course, being on site in Nashville. So we'll get, the inside scoop on what else went down in the first round of the draft, or what didn't go down. Plus, we haven't had a chance to sit down and talk about the Kevin Hayes deal. So we'll do that coming up next. So, Russ, like I said, we have not had the opportunity to talk about the Kevin Hayes trade to St. Louis for the 6th round pick and the 50% salary retention. And I think, once the big deal didn't go through and they decided to just cut their losses and take this smaller deal, we all knew it was very clear that Travis Sanheim was the carrot in this deal, like getting the return. And unfortunately, I think because of the very public situation with Kevin Hayes and John Tortorella, like Danny Briere was in a very difficult position to try and get anything in return for Kevin Hayes, because they knew that the situation here was untenable. And so that kind of, takes your bargaining power away.
Yeah, once Krug put his foot down, that was like the only part of the deal where they might have gotten something that you would say, wow, I wasn't expecting that. Afterward, this is exactly what I expected. Like, there's nothing more that you could, but I get it. Like, what I think the problem here is just the expectations of fans rose as, media were talking about it and everything.
Right.
And that's where I think, the front office needs to kind of plug up some of these leaks pre-trade to kind of like make sure that doesn't happen again, because it's never a fun thing when all of a sudden, basically the fans are thinking, wow, we're going to get like another first round pick, or wow, we're going to get this really good player, and you get nothing. And then it's like, oh, so, I think that part is correctable. But as far as the trade, he couldn't have done anything else.
No, I absolutely think that. And we talked about the possibility of doing a Kevin Hayes buyout versus the trade, and that the buyout would have been a nightmare on the cap. And so this, 3.571 million cap hit, it's rough for the next 3 years. Don't get me wrong, but it is nowhere near as bad as a buyout would have been. And again, this money will come off the cap right when the Flyers should be hitting their stride. And so,
yes,
I think it's not great, but it's also, I think, much better than it could have been otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, what the big thing now is going to be, how does this fit in concert with what's going to happen with D'Angelo? What's going to happen? Like, there's going to be a lot of dead money this year for sure. And, maybe even more going forward, depending on like if Sanheim gets traded. So, we'll see how all of that part works out.
Yeah, definitely have to put all of this in context of everything that Danny Briere does this offseason, and see where the cap ends up, see where the roster ends up for this year one of the rebuild, and evaluate from there going into the season. The schedule dropped as well, and the NHL has a sense of humor with the Flyers opening at Columbus with Ivan Provorov there.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting because I got the sense that they just wanted to get the schedule out of the way. Like, how the NFL makes a big deal about it? It seems like the NHL was just like, let's do this so we can go on summer vacation. Because I was talking to some other reporters.
Mark your calendars, kids.
Yeah. I was talking to other reporters, and it seems like the schedule used to drop around July 8th or a little later. And so this time it's like, nope, we want everything done. And so they did it. They just put it out. And I could also tell you there's definitely murmurs about the Coyotes, and when they kind of they have a potential drop dead date for what's going to happen with them this year and going forward. So I have a feeling if they don't strike a deal in the next, let's say, 2.5 months, then, I think they're going to be doing some other planning.
Yeah, I think so too. The only other interesting thing about the schedule is this October 24th day, where they have almost every team playing, and they're staggering the starts by 15 minutes, which is something that fans have been clamoring for, so that, there's always hockey going on. The Flyers have the very last puck drop in that schedule at 11 p.m. Eastern. So that should be a Flyers After Dark to remember. It's on a Tuesday. So buckle up, I guess, for that one, as the kids are saying these days.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. I wonder if that's like, Hockey Day in America or something. It could be something like that.
Well, the Canadian teams are playing as well. So it's Hockey Day for everybody.
Well, it's always Hockey Day for everybody in Canada.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. All right, Russ. So you were there in Nashville for day one. No trades, which is the first time that's happened since 2007, apparently.
Which I applaud, because I always want it to be about the draft. Yeah. I don't want it to be about the veterans. I don't want it to be about the established stars. I want it to be about the future stars. And, like it or not, everybody had to focus on the future stars. And that's good. I like that.
I guess that's fair. You're a prospect guy, so
yeah. Give me this one day, man. Like, you could talk about all these other things every other day of the week. I just want this one day.
And we talked about the picks above the Flyers and what led to them taking Michkov, but I think that some people thought the Ducks might take Leo Carlsson, but it still took a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, I mean, we did the pre-show on Sirius, and we were like, Fantilli's not a lock in this spot. And, and had talked about Carlsson before, just simply because I'd heard it, through the grapevine. So, that did turn out to be legit info. And yeah, I mean, I wasn't shocked, and it was only like a 1-spot difference between the two guys. So it's just like, hey, you prefer a BMW and I prefer, a Jaguar. I think it's just like that.
Yeah, I think so as well. And, it definitely set things off on a good foot of intrigue in terms of those, up until the Flyers took Michkov. I think,
Yeah.
it was pretty exciting to see, who those picks were. And then after that, things, at least for the next, I would say 5 to 10 picks, went pretty expected. And then the bottom of the first round was kind of insane.
Yeah, all over the place. Yeah. And again, I was in the back for a lot of it, and then I went back to like the radio area, and so a lot of it becomes like a blur. But there was definitely not like anybody saying, "Wow, I just can't believe this pick! Like this is so ridiculously off the board." I don't think there was anything like that. But I do think teams even decided in the first round, like, hey, like Colorado shot high with Gulyayev, and that's fine. There's a lot to like there. It's kind of like a mixed bag, but when you're at 31, you could do that. No goalie went in the first round. I was not surprised at that. I mentioned on the Sirius show that I didn't expect one to. There will be a run of goalies, probably 3, 4, 5 picks into the second round, and there'll be a good run of them, and that's where you'll see that some of those guys going. I did get an exclusive with Jacob Fowler, who will be the teammate of Cutter Gauthier and Devin Kaplan this coming season at BC. So that's, fans could look out for that. Not everybody has to always read about the Flyers, but in the end, I think it was an interesting first round. I think now, actually, when we look at this draft down the line, this could be one of the more successful second rounds, I think, because of a lot of the players that are still on there. So I think that's going to be the interesting thing for me. I expect there to be a certain amount of success from this first round, but now I think the second round's stacking up where there could be a fair amount of success for that.
Yeah, I think so too. And you look at, the best available players that are still out there. I would be working the phones if I were Danny Briere trying to get into the second round. Especially, talking to goaltenders, like Harabel is there.
Yeah.
And then, Andrew Cristall, who was our pick at 22 in the mock draft, is still available. So
he's still there. Jaden Perron's still there. Gavin Brindley's still there. There's a lot of guys that I like that are still there. So that's a fair point. And I'm sure he worked on things last night. But once you get out there on the draft floor this morning, if you don't have something like already kind of set, it's hard. Right. You don't get a lot of time. And
no, because these guys come
off the board quickly.
Fire.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where you have to pretty much have the framework set up last night. And then maybe, when you talk on the floor in the morning, you can finish it up. But that's it. You don't get a lot of time here.
Yeah. So we'll see if any of that happens. Otherwise, the Flyers' next pick is in the third round at 87th overall, and they've got a whole bunch of picks: 2 in the third, 2 in the fourth, a fifth, 2 sixth, and a seventh. So a lot of prospects that could be entering the Flyer system, assuming no additional trades happen. Any other little quick fun story from the draft floor?
No, I really can't. Well, I will tell you, Fantilli, I don't know what was on it because I was looking from a distance because I was covering some other things. But when he took off his Columbus sweater, he had a vest on that had some writing on the back. So I'm not sure what that was or what it represented. Maybe it was all his teammates from Michigan. I don't know what it was, but it was interesting and something I'm going to look at today. I just didn't have a chance.
Yeah, the inside had pictures from throughout his hockey career, so he could kind of bring everybody who got him to this point with him. It was very touching, actually.
Oh no, this kid's got a flair for everything. Like I'm telling you, when I spoke to him, before the season even began, I could tell he was a special guy.
Yeah. It was actually, it got me very emotional when I saw
there you go.
Actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that is a good note to end on. Again, we've got more picks coming, and we will give you the skinny on all of the new Flyers picks on tomorrow's show. And as a reminder, we always want to hear from you. We're going to do a full mailbag episode next week with all your questions on the draft picks and free agency. So send in your questions via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, or you can comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.